Well, hey everyone, this is David Rocchio, and if it's about 1:30 on the East Coast, and if you are here for stewardship, you are in the right place. Hopefully everybody's getting in okay. I still see folks coming in from the waiting room. We'll give them a couple minutes to start. But again, this is stewardship for the afternoon, and hopefully rectors and deans can find their home someplace close. And I appreciate everybody's resilience and forgiveness, and know that everybody's trying to do their best here. It's like everybody's getting out of church at once and going to the bathrooms. You know, it's kind of overwhelming. So but we are doing our best. I'm here with several of my colleagues from around the Episcopal Church, mostly stewardship professionals and some stewardship volunteers. And we had this morning session on our top 10 best practices, but this afternoon we really want to spend time kind of hearing from each other and talking to each other about where we've been, what has worked well, what lessons we've learned in this time of pandemic and COVID and change, what maybe has not gone so well for us, and maybe what's gone better, maybe what improvements you've had. We've seen some of those here at the Cathedral. And then in the latter part of the next hour and a half or 90 minutes, we'll maybe talk about where we're going. What are some of the ways we've adapted, and things that we'll try to do this year and in the coming years. So really, this is really hopefully just a time for us to be with each other, learn from each other, and care for each other. We are probably going to use the chat room as much as we can to get the questions out there. So if you'll use that chat, we're going to monitor it and make sure we try to pick up your questions. We have two folks in particular that are monitoring that. But I might just throw out to just to get the ball rolling a little bit to my colleagues up here on the screen. If you could maybe just identify some of the maybe one or two of the biggest challenges and opportunities that you've had at your congregation in the past year and how you've addressed them. And April is at the top left on my screen. So April, please.
Thanks, David. We've really adjusted to much more checking in. I know some churches have shepherd groups or a good pastoral team reach outs, but we have been stewardship led for some of these during the pandemic, and some from our pastoral team, but stewardship's taken a much bigger role on doing check-in calls. We also did kind of a huge spreadsheet, which I'm so happy we did, on all the people, on 100% of the parishioners who are worshiping with us or attending formation, and who've done one of our drive-by events. We've had several since the pandemic for parishioners to either pick up something or drop off something with the season. And if there's not a parishioner that has done one of those things, then we have made those parishioners our priorities. And we have reached out specifically by clergy to ask how they're doing. And we don't give up until we actually reach them. And then we invite them over and over to specific things like coffee hour before church on Sunday, those things. So that's been, I think, a paramount concern during the pandemic. The second thing that we've done is make sure that everybody who wants to be in a communion group, of course, we're not meeting in person right now. Anybody who wants to be in a small group in someone's front yard or backyard has that ability to gather. And so we've got, I think, 20-ish groups of 10 or so in each, and those are going really well. And then the third thing stewardship is really looking at is outreach, because we have changed how we're doing outreach with COVID protocols. And there are new opportunities and new ways to volunteer. And so we're very much focusing on that. Adam, I think outreach was part of the 7-layer dip. Is that right? So you may have some other things to talk about there, but I would say those three things are of paramount importance right now.
Adam, I'd love for you to take it from there. What do you?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the challenges I think are probably those of the universal type. The biggest of which is just the delay that the calendar just seemed to stretch in. I mean, our annual appeal normally starts early to mid-fall, and we were pushed back nearly a month. And so when we're reporting our numbers, that is always kind of a factor, because year to date doesn't line up in the way that it did normally. But I think the opportunity, and some of you may being seat parishes, is that St. Thomas has a traditionally a strong web ministry. We've always audio broadcast streamed our services, of which there are many. We have the only choir school for boys in the Anglican tradition in the Western Hemisphere, and so the choir has a great following, and our mission statement is to worship and serve in that choral tradition. But what we've noticed is what we so we audio streamed, and then in the pandemic we quickly pivoted through the generosity of our parishioners, both a bequest and some immediate support from those still with us, to install and use a video system, and also simultaneously, as part of a strategic plan that had basically been at the crest of unveiling, we added a communications director, someone who's directly responsible on the day-to-day for these kinds of things, which has been absolutely wonderful. Heretofore never had a communications director, and so he's done a terrific job as both communications and digital production. And so the opportunity is that what I call the global parish, and we're about to launch into an appeal. We had never had any sort of registration or information capture, and that was an interesting discussion culturally. We don't have someone at the doors of Fifth Avenue and 53rd Street, like asking people for their name and phone number, right? So how do we then turn around and do that to the global parish? But simultaneously, in order for them to feel like they're part of things, we would like to inform them and engage in, and we can't do that without an email address or something. So we put up a portal that gives people an option. They don't have to, but we've captured almost 800 email addresses. And we're trying to figure out ways to engage these folks who may never, ever walk through the doors, and who probably have their own home parish, but they find comfort and value in joining us. We've gotten really tremendous feedback, and so that opportunity, figuring out ways to sort of politely ask someone if they would be willing to part with their email, and then ways to engage them that isn't first and foremost, hey, would you give us money to support what you're watching, but more a survey. We're in the process of scripting out a welcome video. Hey, this is your parish, and I'm hoping to have it be kind of on a more sit down next to you as opposed to across the table from you. But I think that's something that we're seeing, that kind of far reaching thing.
That's excellent. Dina, anything in your parish to add to what those folks are seeing?
Yeah, I mean, we've done a lot of the things that April was talking about, stepping up our phone calls, especially to those 70 and over, it's something we should have been doing all the time anyway. And so this is really helping us sort of, make it a priority. We did find that our website, while it was decent before, was really not super conducive to the amount of video content that we have to rely on now, since we're not meeting in person. So we redesigned the website with that in mind over the summer, so that we could have a children's video blog, we could have a music video blog, we have the rector's blog, so we have all these different things going now on the website. Worship services are easier to get to. Sermons are now not just audio, they're video. So that kind of thing has really helped us stay connected with people, and we're finding that they're really accessing that content a lot more than they were before. David, you're on mute, I think.
Yep, sorry. Kate, anything to add down in St. John's?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing a lot of the same trends. What Adam was talking about, the digital membership, sort of people who are consistently joining our centering prayer groups on Monday nights from Tennessee, from all, just other countries, family members, people randomly finding us. So that's an interesting thing. I think the church, what will happen when people start going back? We're going to continue to be streaming all of our services. We weren't streaming anything before COVID. So we had to very quickly pivot. And we were able to find some funds to get some cameras. And so we've really just come up to speed. We have a YouTube channel now and the whole 9 yards. One of the things I wanted to highlight for y'all is it's actually a great success story. So last year in Louisville, I was at one of the cocktail parties, and this great guy walks up to a group of us. We were chatting, and he says, "Hey, I'm doing a talk about this program called GPL. You should come check it out." And I said, "All right, cool. What's it about?" And it's about high school students and microloans. And so I was intrigued, and I didn't really know anything about microloans. And so I went to the talk. I was completely enamored with this project that he started up in Connecticut. His name is Rich Stein, St. Stephen's, I believe, up in Connecticut. And so we communicated a bunch of times for the next couple of months, and I rolled out this program early on in COVID, thinking, I don't know how or if this is going to work, but I'm so glad I did it, because what we have found here in St. John's is we're having a little trouble reaching our older folks. Are like, they're all up to speed. They're all about the Zoom. They love it because they don't like to drive at night. They come to every class, every coffee talk. Who we're not seeing are our families of teenagers and kids as much, because people in that younger demographic are a little sick of Zoom because they're doing it for work. They're doing it for every meeting. They're not about the Zoom. So this class GPL that I started here is, we have a cohort of 12 students, and we meet once a month, and there is a lesson each month. And we're talking about like big, complicated issues about global poverty, world hunger, investing, how charity can become toxic sometimes with a very patriarchal, white supremacist worldview. And so this is a very different lens through which to encounter this stuff. But we're also using scripture. We're using Lectio Divina with the students. And these kids are incredible. I have had the best time, and I think they have had the best time. We have rooms big enough to accommodate our group. It's about 15 total. I have a couple other adult mentors with me. We're all wearing masks. If we're ever eating, the kids are outside. Luckily in Florida, we have great weather pretty much all the time. So we can do a lot of things outside. And Florida's also kind of crazy about the science. So we have some different rules than maybe some other states may have here. But we do take lots of precaution, and we haven't had any COVID outbreaks or anything. But I think the students have really enjoyed being together, being at church with each other and learning about this stuff. And so I was able to fundraise on this. I raised about $5,000 so that the students are making these micro loans. Each student is making 9 $25 microloans through kiva.org. We have a giant map. They're learning about geography. They're learning about investing in people through a Christian lens. What Jesus teaches us to do, that's what we're going and doing. And so I'm really excited about this program. It's just been the highlight of my year. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is something that we decided to do during Lent. We decided to do a special fundraising campaign, a little mini campaign. We're working with this group called RIP Medical Debt, where we had a goal to raise $10,000 so we could kind of crowdsource and go out and retire $1 million worth of medical debt in our region. We've already what day are we in Lent? I don't even know, but we've already blown past our $10,000. We're at 13, and the money keeps rolling in. So the more we raise, the more debt we can retire. And it's interesting to me how this has really resonated with people who were giving maybe $80 a month. I had a woman walk in my office and write a check for $1,000 for this campaign because it really spoke to her. So I think having that outreach focus is really important in COVID time, to show like we are responding to the pain of the world. So that's what's going on in St. John's.
Excellent, Kate. That's great. We just to piggyback on that, I think Kate knows, we also did a Rest in Peace Medical Debt campaign in the summer and fall of last year. It took off like lightning here as well. Obviously Atlanta's a bigger town, but we raised over $120,000 and we specifically partnered with one of our churches that is which is in the city and works with more of a at-risk populations. and targeted the zip codes around that parish. And that really resonated with a lot of our folks as well. Margaret or Lauren, any things to add about, that kind of hasn't been mentioned about, challenges or opportunities that you all have seen in the past year?
Well, I'll just chime in real quick. We, one of the opportunities that we were able to tackle, I use the word opportunity, but our online giving was just really archaic. And folks would have to email me and say, I'm making a pledge, and that's what the $20 is for. We couldn't set up recurring giving. So we, in March, started using Tidely, which has been really great for us. I know I've spoken to some of you about it, and but it's been a great fundraising tool for us. It lets them handle their reoccurring giving. So we're increasing that, which I think is a wonderful way to make sure we reach our budget at the end of the year, is when folks have those reoccurring giving. So that's been a great tool that we didn't have before that we've been able to use. And it allowed us to address some of our website issues like Dina mentioned. We are not quite up to speed with that yet, but we are working on that. So one of the challenges we've seen is just some of the political turmoil that we've been in the past year. And we've seen some repercussions from parishioners with that. And I think last time we spoke, we were well under budget. We had about $60,000 left for our stewardship campaign. And since then, I will say gladly that we've exceeded our goals. So we don't have as many participants, which I think is equally as important as the goal, but we have exceeded our financial goals. So I'm encouraged by that. But we certainly have a lot of work to do to keep those other families that couldn't pledge this year for financial reasons, to make sure we keep them engaged. So we're working on plans to continue to do that.
Lauren, do you want to add anything?
Sure. I'll just, I'll kind of piggyback on what Margaret was saying, just as far as numbers go. I've been kind of interested in how other churches have been doing as far as meeting their goals and things like that. So, and we're pretty goal centric here. We set goals for every campaign. We have a participation goal, a dollar amount goal. In the past, we've had new and increased pledge goal. We decided not to do that this year just because of the crazy, unique year that we're in. We really wanted to focus on participation. And then also recurring gifts. We had kind of a mini campaign around people signing up for recurring gifts. So our goal was 800. So just to give you a little background, we've got about 1,700 members here, and our goal was 800 pledging units. And right now we have about 760. Our dollar goal was 2.6 million. And like Margaret, we met the dollar goal, but we are a little behind on our participation goal. And it seems like I've heard that from some other churches that I have been in touch with. So just to give y'all kind of a little background on goals and numbers, because I'm curious about your churches as well. But as far as challenge, I'll say, and I know everyone's dealing with this, our challenge is engagement, and like, how can we engage people when they're sick of Zoom? Our doors aren't fully open to them. So, we're trying to be creative with that. We're really trying to develop and grow our small group ministry, because that is kind of a place where people maybe can gather in masks or get in a small group on Zoom. So we've seen a lot of success with growing our small groups. And our leadership team talked recently about, we haven't done this yet, but we have plans to assemble kind of a re-engagement task force, because this has been a year that we have been, dealing with the pandemic, and we really need to be strategic about how we're going to re-engage our parishioners when our doors are open again. So we are kind of in the early stages of forming that kind of committee.
That's excellent, Lauren. In fact, it's actually a nice pivot to my next question for the group was really like, let's talk numbers. I mean, let's get down into the brass tacks. And what I'm thinking, just for kind of comparison's sake, let's not talk about current campaign. Let's talk about, the campaign that, let's talk about how the year ended in 2020. Because I know we're all in kind of the midst of 2021. And we can talk about that maybe in the latter half of maybe what trends you're seeing for this year's campaign. But how did you finish last year? And really in those three buckets, the three-legged stool: operating, capital, endowment. If you did anything in those kind of categories as well. I mean, most of us are focused on operating, of course, but how did the money come in? What was participation like? What did y'all see? And then as an addendum to that, I know some folks were able to participate in the PPP. Maybe just kind of a status update, if you use PP, kind of where you stand and what that looks like for you all right now. Does somebody want to go first? All right, Dina, thank you.
Sure. We were not engaged in any capital projects last year in terms of fundraising, but we saw about a 1% increase in pledging last year, or I should say actually total household giving. So that would have been pledging and non-pledge giving. We received 101% of pledges, which was interesting. So people oversubscribed to their pledges. And we added about 1.8 million to our endowment, our operating endowment last year, which is interesting looking back because, throughout the year, we were thinking, what is this going to look like? What is this going to mean? But what we really found is that our people were wanting to stay connected and wanting to make sure that the parish was going to weather this. And so it really became sort of a rally point for people, and they were super generous. We did avail ourselves of the first PPP loan. We were modest in our ask just to cover salaries for I don't recall now, I think it was a 6-week period or something like that. So we did that. So that it would be within the guidelines for forgiveness. We're still waiting on that from our banker because they're in the midst of processing the second round, which we did not choose to do because our net income forward into 21 was the highest amount ever in the history of the church, over 200,000 in the black. And so we had some creative opportunities around that. But because of that, we decided that it was not going to be good or right for us to proceed with a second loan.
And Dina, let me just ask a point of clarification. The 200K in the black, does that include the PPP amount, or it's not with the PPP amount?
That is, let me think about that for a moment. That is without.
So yeah, if it's forgiven, then that's even more icing on the cake, if you will.
Yeah.
But, okay. April, can you follow up on Dina?
Sure. Like Dina, we did get a PPE loan, and it was for $600,000. It was pretty much all used for salary. Well, that's what it's for, all for salary. We did have to give back a substantial amount because we just weren't able to use it, but it mostly went for our hospitality department. We've got public lunches and dinners, and of course, no special events. And we have a hospitality ministry that relies on special events, other groups and nonprofits and businesses using our space. So pretty much that went for paying for baristas in our coffee shop and kitchen staff salaries. We do have curbside to go, but we're just not making it right now with that. Ministry is not really bringing in anything. It's a great ministry for families, especially at our day school when they pick up their kids, to be able to pick up dinner also, but it's really not bringing home the bacon like we're used to. And we do have bacon in our church. It smells like it. So that's kind of funny. our special request that I talked about earlier in the morning for urgent technology request was for $100,000. We went over and above that request. For annual giving, our goal was very modest. We had dropped it down substantially to 1.75, and we exceeded that much higher than I thought we would. So we did end up in the black. I was real pleased with that. And for endowment, we ended up with $100,000 gift for a special international outreach. And that was really excited. So we are have a new endowment, $100,000, and we're so excited to be able to work with the Diocese of Southern Malawi in Africa on this, and then local charities that have outreach events also. So we either ended up in the black or exceeded in all categories, and it was the grace and the generosity of our parishioners, and I can't get over how people really rose to the challenge. And what really got me more than anything was when the pandemic started, we got a lot of phone calls from people saying, do you want us to make our stock gift now instead of waiting till December? And the answer was yes, please. And that is what carried us through the summer. And that is what told us we were going to make it. But if we were relying on my projections, I was worried we were going to drop off. But because of those early stock gifts, we never had to lay anybody off, or we were never in a situation of financial peril.
That's great. Thank you, April. Adam?
Yeah, so St. Thomas is a fairly large operation overall. We're raising money for the church. We're raising money for a school. It's its own building on 58th Street in New York City, where it's a full-time boarding school, fully staffed, and about anywhere between 25 and 33 kids at any one given time. That's been a wholly different experience. Obviously, they've been primarily remote. We in addition, a couple things. We did apply for and receive a wonderful support from the PPP loan that allowed us to basically get through the year without any furloughs or layoffs. That changed within the last 6 weeks, and we did have to furlough a few dozen staff across both sort of organizations, church and school. Year end for 2020. In addition to all of that happening, we also had a complete turnover in our finance office. And so working through that and installing new systems and analytics or database, et cetera, we're waiting on final numbers, but I could say with confidence that we're in line with years past, given what I was speaking about earlier with the overall calendar moving later, et cetera. And I guess in addition to those two things, we also raised money for a concert series for the choir of men and boys. And that has been an interesting project. And that I can speak, I started as the concert series manager and then moved into director of development. And so that series saw, as most arts organizations saw, a 30% decrease. And yet, we basically have a series that's centered on the choir of men and boys, from which no one has had a concert in over a year. So, speaking to kind of the generous support, and we made a year-end appeal for that, that really hit home with folks, kind of calling to the thing that they love, recognizing that we don't have it now, but we will, and would just stick with us during this time, kind of painting that picture of the first concert and the first reception and those things. So those aren't specific numbers for you, but I mean, ballpark, same, 30% down for concert series. The biggest thing, and it's a larger thing, and maybe other churches this as well, is before pandemic, we were in the process of kind of structural budget changes through that strategic plan. And so difficult almost to discern, exactly the challenges here. Are they related to pre-pandemic? Are they, compounded by pandemic? And what are we looking at as we go ahead? And we're going to be launching a capital campaign to support the school, ideally in perpetuity. And how is that possible given this new context?
Thank you, Adam. Yeah, I mean, Adam's in particular in a highly urban environment with, a significant component with a school, which I mean, obviously we're all very familiar with.
One thing too, like, if I can just follow up, is that St. Thomas itself a lot of urban churches rely on space rental for revenue. And we did not, because mostly we don't really have the space. Our room, it's just kind of not conducive to space rental. So that's sort of a blessing in disguise, because prior to that, I was thinking, this is a great opportunity, but we didn't lose half our operating budget because we didn't make it up in the first place from that area, which is interesting.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that and just say that the Cathedral of St. Philip in Atlanta, we ended up having about $100,000. We were about $100,000 in the red for the year, and which pretty much aligned with our loss of income from rental incomes, as Adam just mentioned. So people renting out our space throughout the year, that cost us about $50,000, and loose offering. So plate collection of cash, which we stopped doing in March of last year, and really have not picked up, also cost us about 1% of our budget. We applied and successfully for the PPP at about $550,000. We learned 2 weeks ago it was forgiven. So that $100,000 loss does not include the PPP loan. We had the other kind of thing that affected the Cathedral. We were pretty much kind of above kind of growing kind of pledge wise, but we had 2 parishioners die last year, unrelated to COVID, just kind of old age, but they were solid 5-figure pledgers. And so that was about another $100,000 in lost income from just 2 people. The bright light or shining light for silver lining for 2020 for the Cathedral was that we undertook a campaign to endow our canon for music position. So we undertook a campaign to permanently endow that position, kind of like a chair at a college. And I want to say we were successful. We had a goal of $3.4 million. We've now have that in pledges and contributions. And so that will generate over time about $150,000 to $170,000 a year. And so we're pretty excited about that. That clearly makes up for the gap that we had last year, and we think it really strengthens us going forward. And then capital, the other thing that we made an investment in last year is kind of how we're going to come out of this. And so we've installed several Zoom rooms around our campus, and these are kind of fully integrated rooms. You walk in, you punch a couple buttons, and up on the screen comes all these beautiful faces. And but they're fully integrated. They've got microphones, speakers, video, cameras, all that stuff, so that folks can walk in and we can have what we expect to be kind of hybrid meetings kind of going forward. People that are feeling safe to come back to church, people that aren't really there, and we think it'll be good no matter what. I mean, if folks are on travel and they want to jump in on a Bible study, it's plug and play. It works really well. Okay, maybe Kate, do you want to maybe talk about your numbers at St. John's?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So in 2020, we had built in about a 3% growth figure into our pledges because we had been seeing that trend. So that always makes me nervous. Every year I have a little tussle with the rector. He's like, they'll come, they'll keep coming. And I'm like, but what if they don't? And so, so the bad news is we did not meet our 3% growth, but people did fulfill their pledges. And so while our pledge revenue looked like we didn't meet budget, it was an aggressive budget, I would say. We did receive the PPP funds, about $178,000, and that was forgiven. We got that news at year end, so I was really relieved that I knew I had that in my back pocket. We also are a downtown church. We're not nearly to the scale of Atlanta or New York City here in Tallahassee, but we have some nice little rooms that can fetch a little bit of dough. So we lost some rental income there, and we do have a cafe. We have this wonderful cafe that we operate out of our parish hall. Because we're downtown, we're right by the courthouse, the banks, the high school kids. Everybody comes and has a wonderful lunch here. And that's about $250,000 a year of gross revenue. So we obviously had to shut that down. We shut it down through the summer. And then starting in the fall, we have this awesome culinary director, and she was going stir crazy at home. Her husband was driving her bananas, and so she could not wait to get back to work. So we set up a whole takeout operation, and it's all run through volunteers. We pay her and one assistant, and everybody else is a volunteer, and everyone just had a can do, we'll figure this out, like touchless, no cash, only online orders, pickup. And so that the cafe that could is chugging along again. We're getting back up to about almost $1,000 a day in our takeout lunches. We had a couple of incredibly generous non-pledge gifts come in at the end of the year. And I'm also the director of finance as well as stewardship. So I was really, chewing my fingernails in December, like stressing that we were not going to make this budget, because like, I'm sure many of you really have like an extra month of revenue budgeted in for your December. And I just thought, I don't know if we're going to make it, but we worked really hard on our year-end communications. I really upped it. I stole April's idea and I sent out a really nice postcard. We did our letter. We did this really in-depth year in review, sort of like, and when we all took a breath and looked at what we had done in a year as a staff, it was unbelievable. And people responded so favorably to that email correspondence that went out that last week of December. Our gifts just went through the roof. Got a lot of stock gifts. I think the stock market was good to some people this year. And so we did well. We had 7 commitments come in for our planned giving. That's just sort of like people signing the letter saying, I want to be in this. And then we had 1 parishioner pass away, and we did receive his legacy gift. And that was about $80,000. We are in the final stages of our capital campaign, which was a 5-year campaign, $5 million, and the gifts are coming in. People were really making those final payments in the last year, and the campus is beautiful. It's really a crying shame that nobody's here to see how beautiful it is. But we've been doing lots with videos, and we've also, like you, David, have some of those really great hybrid rooms where they're even Kate Kyle proof. I can go in and push the button and the Zoom just pops up magically. So it's really great. So that's how we're doing here.
That's great. It's always great to hear Kate, because Kate is, as many of you know, is the director of finance and stewardship. So she knows exactly how it's coming in, not just what's being asked for. Lauren, do you mind sharing kind of your experience at Christ Church? Well, you shared a little bit, but anything else you have to add?
Yeah, I can share a little bit more. We ended up ending the year 2020 about 150,000 behind in our pledged income. So, but then we were kind of up in budget and non-pledged income. So our non-pledged numbers, we've seen some growth with, and like I think Kate was saying, we've had a couple of pretty large non-pledged gifts, which has been a blessing. So we ended up the year pretty good. It wasn't quite a wash, but with about 150,000 behind in pledged income, but then over by about 80,000 in non-pledged income, we did okay. We did apply for the PPP loan and got it. I think that was about 565,000. That was for staff salaries. We also have a preschool that we run downstairs, and so that was also to help with preschool staff salaries as well. So luckily, we have not had to furlough anyone or let anyone go. So we feel good about that. Our endowment, let's see, we had probably about 3 or 4 endowment commitments last year. We did have a couple, a pretty generous couple pass away, and that was about a $250,000 legacy gift. But our endowment grew. Like, we were a $16 million endowment, and now we're a little over 18 million. So our endowment's doing great right now. And the one other thing, in February of last year, we did a feasibility study with our some of our major donors to figure out if we were ready for a capital campaign. literally within weeks, the pandemic hit, and we kind of put that on hold for a little while. But as of last month, we did circle back conversations with the same people that we met with a year ago to kind of follow back up and see if we can, think about having a capital campaign in the coming, I don't know if in the coming months, but maybe closer to the end of the year. So that's kind of where we're at.
Yes, Adam, you want to say something?
Just actually more of a follow-up question, because I think I'd be very interested in what y'all are thinking. We too have lost almost 12% of our annual campaign monies due to the passing of the sort of generational shift, and that was something that I recall thinking about a lot before COVID, and now, that's still happening, right? And how are we, those bigger gifts, those, 5-figure kind of commitments are hard to come by. And to a certain extent, it seems even related to a kind of way of giving that, we've moved away from culturally. So I don't know if y'all have thoughts about that, because it's such a hit when it happens, and we miss the people too, right? Because they're really connected and involved. But boy, oh boy, yeah. So I just wonder what y'all have thought about, kind of strategically in terms of that shift and those bigger losses.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have an answer to that, but I just want to say we're feeling that too, just not even of people passing, but just of they're becoming elderly. They're paying for, CCRCs to stay in. They're unfortunately have dementia, and so to Caroline's, earlier comments about the appropriate aggression, it's like, what does that look like when that their children have taken over their finances, and you've talked to them and they've said they'll get it in, but they haven't. And it's a huge concern here, because we do have, $55,000 pledges that come in, and these folks are in their 80s. And when that's gone, our little cute, Episcopalian families aren't, going to be able to support that at this point. So we are trying to cultivate that. I think a lot of it is having those conversations, especially during capital campaigns, about not only your capital gift, but also like trying to stretch your stewardship gift. And we are about year 3 in a capital campaign. And I just got word last night that we're going to probably have to start doing the groundwork for another mini capital for about $2 million. But so I think capital campaign is a great opportunity to start having some of those stewardship conversations, because those are larger gifts. And if they are able to give a $30,000 gift to this capital, try and incorporate that conversation into the stewardship. But yeah, we've got great concerns with that here too.
I think that's a good point, Margaret. I appreciate your response. I think one of the opportunities there, and this is what we tried to do at the cathedral, is endowment, is getting some of those into plan giving, so that you can, and if you structure them the correct way, like we have for this Canon for Music endowment, then then that goes back into operating. And in this case, we had 2 pretty large estate gifts. One that was it was in that kind of 20 times multiple of her annual gift. She gave it in life, and so that will perpetually kind of ensure her gift to the church. But the other was much larger. It was about a $2 million commitment from a person who only gave us $1,000 a year before he died. So it was substantial. And there's some you've got those whoa, this is incredible moments, and you've got some others that are not so incredible when they didn't quite kind of ensure their legacy giving. But I think endowment and legacy is where the opportunity there is, as well as kind of working on your gift range chart and trying to get folks to give generously and make the case. As I've shared in past sessions, I have this one pager that I like to share with folks, which kind of it's today, tomorrow, and forever. It's like, okay, you're giving $10,000 now, but what's the forever? How does this translate into a legacy here at the church. I appreciate there's some great dialogue going on in the chat. One of the things I'm picking up on is how are diocesan or how are dioceses responding to PPP? It looks like, just from my anecdotal look at things, is that most dioceses are not counting that as operating income, so it's not going against your assessment. That it still may be too early to know for some dioceses. Like, for instance, I don't know what Atlanta's doing right now. They may have made a decision, I just don't know. But that is another consideration. Some folks have also asked about how you all, not, obviously most of the people on this screen are about going to raise the money, not so much save the money, but how, if maybe folks could speak to how how they might have adjusted their program budget or operating budget in the past year with the pandemic. I mean, what maybe got more emphasis or more money, and what got a little less emphasis, or where do you have to spend a little less money in the past year? If maybe a couple folks would volunteer on that, I would appreciate it. And last thing is, please do keep putting your questions in the chat. We'll try to answer them. We've got about another 40-45 minutes together, and my questions get old, so I'd love for your questions to get out here.
David, I'll talk a little bit about.
I feel like I always call on you guys last. You want to go? Lauren or Margaret? Will you go first this time?
I stepped to get a cup of water, so Lauren's going to have to go.
Sure. No, I'm happy to jump on that. Our budget discussions for this year were lengthy, and we kind of, to go back to the conversation on our older seniors who are our major donors kind of passing away. We want to be sure that we're focusing on our younger members. So we hired a young adult faith development director, and we are investing our money there because we feel like it is hugely important to kind of grow that pool of membership and engage that pool of membership more. So we're investing dollars there. I mean, obviously with communications and technology, we are investing more money there because we kind of have to now at this point. We were talking about maybe hiring a digital communications person, and ultimately we ended up having to cut that from the budget. But I think we kind of moved some things around to where we have people here who can kind of focus on that. But another area that we're investing in is engagement. I feel like I'm kind of a broken record, but to go back to engagement, it's so important. We had that was like a 20-hour role here. And because of the importance of it, we have elevated that position to a full-time position. So we're kind of investing in our engagement director. So that's kind of some of the biggies as far as our budget for this year.
Kate, I feel like Kate's going to have great knowledge of this because she's probably managing the budget as well as stewardship stuff. So.
Yeah, one of the things we're talking about here is doing an amended budget because, I really was like, you want me to predict what? Who knows when this is going to be normal? So we did it. We did our best faith, year in what we thought might happen with the understanding that probably 6 months into this year, we're going to have to take a good hard look. We also just had our rector resign recently. So we are going to be in transition time, which is, you know, no one ever really looks forward to that from a stewardship vantage point. But one of the things we are investing in this year is we've started this Center for Spirituality. We're talking a lot about the spiritual but not religious, or the people who don't think of themselves as church people, and how might we attract them to us. And so we're doing things like yoga classes and walking meditation, or silent retreats, things that are, you know, certainly we're not shying away from our beliefs and our faith, but we are also trying to widen our lens and our ability to attract people. We have a really vibrant music program here too, which is what attracts a lot of people to us. So we're in talks right now about a choir school. So I may be calling you, Adam, to chat with you a little bit about that. So yeah, you know, our program, like our parish life, our fellowship, our activities on site are those expenses I don't anticipate to be very high for this year. But like Lauren mentioned, we hired a worship production assistant to help us with all of the technology of, you know, these sling studios and doing instructed Eucharist with the priests here through Zoom. You know, that was just expertise none of us really had. But luckily, there's a film school down the street at FSU. So we got a great deal on a student for $15 an hour to help us with that. And he thinks it's a great job. So you kind of have to get creative with what you have, but those are places that we're putting some investment.
Anybody else want to talk about maybe how they've, you know, emphasized or de-emphasized something? Yes, April.
Yeah, David, yeah, we were lucky that we had a plan already in place for a couple of things before the pandemic hit. One was to upgrade all of our PCs were way out of date. So I think it was the last possible moment we all switched over in time so we could still have Outlook. I talked before about how we installed 42 Wi-Fi ports, which our building covers a block. That's a lot of Wi-Fi ports. That's a lot of space. For people, we did a huge investment in personnel. And the biggest one for me was that we brought in a part-time AV person, which I don't know how on earth we could live stream services. We pre-record on Thursdays, and then we release simultaneously on our website, Facebook, and YouTube, which I'm sure a lot of y'all do the same thing. We also, for our communication assistant director, we bumped her up to full-time because she was working full-time during this. There was just so much more content on our website. I feel like once a week, I ask her to put something new on the website. This week it was, we just had our Legacy Sunday, and I wanted to put the testimonial on the website. And now, because she's full-time, she was able to do it the same day. So it's that quick of a turnaround now, when before we had to wait a while. And also what was in the works before the pandemic was our spirituality center called the Abbey. And that's a place for resources for learning and practice, such as our meditation groups, our blogs. There's a lot of content on that that's geared towards non-church folks, and especially non-Episcopalians, non-Christians. Really, the purpose is to bring people further along in the spiritual path, and hopefully that spiritual path leads them to Jesus. So for me, that was a huge mark that we did, and we were just lucky that was in the works. And we do have a part-time director over the Abbey. So investing in people has really gotten us to where we are today. I can't imagine if we didn't have these positions where we would be. So I'm super grateful for our leadership for this.
Thank you, April. I've got another question that I'm thinking about, but does anybody, before I jump into that, does anybody else want to add anything that might not have been said by anybody else with regard to emphasis or de-emphasis with budget and how y'all have made changes or anything like that? Okay, Juan, I'm going to put you on the spot. So, I mean, it's all great. We're talking about, like, you know, this is what we should do. This is, you know, you need to go talk to donors. You need to develop gift range charts. You need to have one-pagers. But I would like your kind of thoughts or perspective on, hey, how do you do it? I mean, you actually have to, if you're encouraging us to go out and actually talk to donors and talk about God and talk about stewardship and giving back to the church. What are some of the things that you've shared in your kind of stewardship sessions about those actual, conversations? How do you go about it? How do you set it up? What do you talk about when you get there? Could you give us some of your perspective on that?
Well, actually, I do more of that in my pastoral care, but that's one of my other jobs. But can I just kind of address what we do? You all are talking about basically your church, but I'm looking at it in perspective from, sometimes we have people from 15 different churches that attend our workshops. And so we try to give them a set of guidelines. And then we also offer, I don't know if you have consultants in your diocese that go out to your churches. Do you have a stewardship commission in your diocese, number one? And if you do they have consultants that go out to individual churches to help guide them through the I'm going to use the word campaign because that's basically what you're talking about right here, whether it's that or not. So we go and we individualize it for each church. We don't have a cookie cutter that says you're this many people, this is what you need. We actually sit down and talk with the rector, and we talk with some of the people that work with stewardship within their church. We don't actually go out and do the kind of things that you do, David, or some of the others that I know that you've talked about, going doing that person to person. But with the person to person that we do is with the rector, and then a lot of times with the vestry, as well as their stewardship committee. And then we, present to their whole church eventually. So I did pull out a couple of things because I was hoping you might ask something about. So it's all backwards probably, is it? Or do you see it the right? Whoops. Can you even see it? So we have two booklets that we have. One is called, this is the Diocese of Atlanta Stewardship Workshop. It's a workbook, and it has everything that we talk about during our usually 6 to 7 hours that we have together with these people. We offer this 2 to 3 times a year, and we get typically about 25, 30. Occasionally we've had as many as 50 people. So obviously we always start out with prayer. We do a warm-up exercise, like what is your concept of stewardship? And we do the circle of stewardship because we want to start out with a spiritual and theologically based exercise, and reasons for giving, generational giving, which is something you all probably should know about. If you don't, how do you talk to the different generations? How do they give? What things do they think about? What do they have in common? What do they have that's so different about each other? Year-round stewardship, which we have another whole booklet just on that. Again, I know it's hard to see that, but this is a whole book just on year-round stewardship that we offer. And I think if any of you want it, I can probably get it in a digital form for either one of these. And then we talk about, and some of you already talked about, annual commitment program. There's a whole lot of them. So one of the things we've used that's very, very biblically based is New Consecration Sunday. Anybody heard of that? I will tell you that in terms of what you receive back from it, most churches have gone anywhere from 10 to as high as 17% increase in pledging and total funds. So it really works very well. There's booklets. It's all laid out for you. It's fairly easy. You'll need somebody probably to help you along, but it's got a book for the leaders and then book for those that are not leaders. But and it also has everything in on a disc that you can download all the different forms, the spreadsheets, everything. Really, that is a kind of a cookie cutter. So we talk about different annual commitment programs, and that one has been used very successfully. Then we talk about things we've been talking about here: electronic giving, social media, and other stewardship resources. Like I'm sure a lot of you belong to TENS, the Episcopal Network for Stewardship, which offers a lot of different things. So to answer to your question, I hope is that our talking to people is not talking so much to individuals as it is to churches. But we offer a lot of information. And I see the question that, can I share these booklets? Yes, I will try to get them to David. Is that okay, David? I will tack them on and do that. So I don't know if that answers your question or if that helps at all. Like, I'm a consultant. I've been doing it for, here at this diocese, I think almost 14 years, but I've been in stewardship for about over 25 years. I was chair in Oklahoma when I was there. So we had consultants there as well. So I don't know what each of you do, all, anybody that's listening, what you do in your diocese, but maybe I want to think about that, having a diocesan stewardship commission to go out and help churches that, hey, I don't know what I'm going to do this year. What is going to work for me? What's happening in my church? And how do I?
No, Juan, that's great. That's great. No, it's a great reminder that we do. I mean, we're fortunate. A lot of the folks that are on the screen are kind of stewardship professionals, kind of doing this kind of day to day. But a lot of the folks that we're not seeing, that are just kind of in the session, are lay parishioners, lay leaders doing this out there. And the diocesan stewardship offices are an incredible resource, both for us and for lay leaders in the church. So I just so appreciate you kind of walking the talk, Juan. You're a great mentor. You're a great leader. So I appreciate that. I appreciate that very much. Okay, I've got one question here from Rob Towns. A lot of folks know Rob. Lauren Sigmund up in Greenville knows Rob well, but this is always he's always got great questions. So I'm just going to read it verbatim from Rob, and if folks will respond. I'd like to hear what people are doing to quote unquote grow the pie and acquire new members. Any strategic coordination with the diocesan office or other local churches? Any mention of trying to reach out to United Methodists who are bruised by all they are going through and looking around for alternatives? We could invite them to come home. So anybody want to take that one on first? Margaret.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we're not, poaching for the Methodists quite yet, but we are capitalizing on all the folks who are joining us on our website. It says join us for worship. And as Adam said, they fill out their email and we're able to follow up with them with a membership or interest, options for involvement in the next several months. So we've actually gained several members that have never set foot in our nave, which is pretty remarkable. And I'm sure other folks have a similar story, but it really is just trying to engage those folks that are kind enough to share their contact information. But we have yet to hit the road to recruit the Methodists.
Yes, Kate, please.
Yeah, so right before, COVID started, we've been talking a lot, and, we haven't enacted any of these things yet, but we will hopefully get back to where we were right before we lost some momentum. We're talking a lot about the people who aren't churched, as opposed to people who are attending other churches. And so some of the things that we had in the works were, for Lent last year, we were going to do a Stations of the Cross. We have a beautiful park right down the road from us. And so we were going to, it's a 1 mile loop, and we were going to have, we were going to carry the cross, and we were going to stop and we've done a blessing of the animals at this park. So that attracted a lot of good attention. We are on the parade route for Springtime Tallahassee and the Winter Festival. We did caroling outside. So we're trying to get outside of our walls and invite people in through stuff like that.
Excellent. I will say, at the cathedral, we are seeing a lot of this too. We had been live streaming our services for a little while before the pandemic hit. So I think we felt like we kind of got off to a good start. Fortunately or unfortunately, some of the parishioners that we're picking up in the pandemic are from other Episcopal churches that are like completely closed and don't have video services. So we've seen several folks kind of come in that way. It's not who we want to be picking up necessarily, but we're seeing that. Frankly, we're having maybe a little bit of the other challenge too, which is other churches nearby are opening up for in-person inside, and our parishioners are expressing their frustration with either with the cathedral or with the bishop about those policies. So we're having a lot of conversations with folks like, hey, just wait a little bit longer. It's going to be okay. We're going to get back there. Just hold with us, stick with us. So I think we're battling the other edge of that as well. Is, well, if the Catholics can go back, why can't we go back? Truthfully, that's a challenge. It's a real challenge we're facing. Dina, do you want to add anything?
No, we're seeing the same thing here in San Antonio. There are churches that virtually never closed in the state of Texas. Religious communities are really privileged. That's a wonderful thing. It's also a complicated issue at a time like this. We have not been having services. We've just gone to green. We've got a color-coded system here in San Antonio. So we at St. Mark's are going to now start having people inside the church socially distanced. We know what that capacity is. It's about 25% of our normal capacity. And that will start again this coming Sunday, which will be this first time since March that we've had people inside. We have had people outside in the courtyard, but yeah, but that's been a real issue, and people have been frustrated by that. We, try to tell them again to hold on, and here are some other things that we're doing. And but I think that's okay. Everybody's doing the best they can, and I think it will all sort itself out, eventually.
I will add, thank you. As we've shared in kind of planning for this, Dina and Kate both have former Cathedral of St. Philip clergy on their staffs now. But one of the maxims of our dean, C.M. Candler, has been here for a long time now, is to grow the pie. His philosophy is have a good, healthy church, and because people are attracted to good, healthy churches. So it's not so much about going out and finding a mailing list or doing direct marketing. It's about being a good, healthy, attractive place. We do spend a lot of money on making our campus look nice because we want people to come up and feel that it's inviting and things like that. But we also spend a lot of time and energy about trying to be a healthy staff and congregation, and because we think that's its own invitation for folks, that they feel like they'll get taken care of right there. Dina, you want to add something to that?
Yeah, one thing that I would add is I think it really helps to think about your own identity, not your vision so much or your core vocation, but your actual identity. In other words, what makes you, what makes your church, what distinguishes it from others? Not that yours is good and somebody else is bad, but like, what is the thing that is your identity? For us, it's our music program. We're known for that in San Antonio, and we've been really building on that. And that is now one of the main conduits actually for attracting new members. So I think like really kind of doubling down on what that identity is and living into that can be a help.
Yeah, if I could just dovetail off of that. So in addition to St. Thomas, I serve on the vestry of a church 40 blocks north in New York City, the Church of the Heavenly Rest. And the two communities, while both great, are very, very different. And so what I've seen at St. Thomas is like doubling down on what you're good at, like being as excellent as you possibly can be, and making sure that the invitation and availability to that is open to as many people as possible across as many platforms, all the communications that we talked about earlier. And what some of the things that Heavenly Rest are involved in, like asset mapping your parish, right? Figuring out what it is that you have to offer from within your congregants and the skills and talents of the people in the broader community. And that's been an interesting find. So those kinds of things in a strategic sense, like taking the time, especially now when it's easy for folks to jump on a call for half an hour, you don't have to travel, you don't have to, commute time is gone, and like talking through, what are we doing that's really working, and make sure everybody kind of has the same answer. And then also like, well, what are we not tapping into? Those are important conversations, and I think now is a great time to have them. And then in terms of the pie, right, inherently that those are the ingredients of the pie for which it tastes better, and the crust is a little flakier, and so then we can enhance that.
Okay, I'm going to take a question from the audience. I'm going to try this. This is new for me. I'm going to ask Bruce Smith to unmute himself, and hopefully that worked. Bruce, are you out there?
Hi, everybody.
Bruce,
I'm Bruce. I'm the Chief Evangel Officer at St. Thomas Church, where Adam works. And so I've come to this position pretty recently, and I spent the last 12 years working in an independent school and museums. So I'm coming at it from not so much from the church stewardship side of things, but from the traditional sort of fundraising, professional fundraising side of things. And what I was anticipating coming into St. Thomas, which is definitely a little bit unique as a church institution, was more lay involvement. Like in every member canvas, we've got a committee of 20 people, and each of those people is calling 10 or 20 people, or making some kind of personal connection. And so given the pandemic, and just given the way fundraising has evolved over the last 20 years, where it has really gotten so professionalized, and much of this work is now handled by professionals, how is that sitting within church fundraising environments? So I'm really curious from hearing from the panel, and also others, because I'm sure it varies from church to church. What is the role of the professional staff vis-a-vis the fundraising effort? Of course, the clergy play a key role, but also then are the lay volunteers being activated as well?
So this is Caroline Marrock, and Bruce, I'm very happy to answer your question, because with the guidance of Suzanne Colhane this year, we actually implemented that best practice fundraising of direct asks. And I think in the church world, we set a spectrum of people not knowing what others give, because this is a very personal, in the church world, we're very gray. We're not secular fundraising. We don't have, we don't publish names of giving levels. We do publish our names, but it's everyone all together saying thank you. We don't, there are a lot of things that are not done in the church world fundraising wise that are done in the secular fundraising world. So how did we do that, right? How did we say, if this is best practice for development, why would we not do best practice for God? And that's a great question. Why wouldn't we implement that strategy when we're doing the work of Jesus, and instead we'll do it when we do the work of American Heart Association or whatever? God deserves our best. And so here we are. So what we did with our committee, I have a committee of about 20 people that has one lay. Our rector always sits in our committee, and then other church leaders, lay leaders in our community. And we had people, obviously, everyone is not a great asker, right? You have a diversified committee of people who you need on your team. And I had those folks who were truly, this is not their, their strengths add to my work, add to our shared work so well that I didn't need them asking, actually, because you don't want somebody doing more damage than good when they go on and ask, and that could actually happen. So those people who were fine, looking at a list of people that they knew, identifying those folks that they would be open to go and visiting with, and asking for a specific amount of money. We had them identify those folks. Then I met with people individually, those committee members, and I pulled the previous 5-year giving history for those folks that they identified. And we went through one by one. And they just, when their social knowledge, their knowledge of their business world, whatever, they said, okay, they can give more than this, or this is a great gift for them, or whatever. Now, I will say, rarely did we have them ask for an amount that was more than what was sent to their home or given to them on their solicitation letter that's coming from the rector. So they either asked for 10, 20, or a 30% increase. If they really got gutsy and they wanted to, in their conversation, ask for more than that, they did, because they wanted to. So then from that point, and I can share with you, Bruce, offline, just how I structured it internally. Then they had those phone calls or made those visits. We really did go for, we wanted visits. Some women who had been doing this for their sorority or for, for the art museum or whatever it is, this is just how they roll, and they just went face to face. Other people, like I have some high-powered businessmen on my committee, and he said, I want to do this, I'm going to do this, but I can't dedicate the time to go and meet with people face to face. Like, it's better if I just call. And these are people that he was calling that, I mean, when you get them on the phone, you put them on the hook and what have you. And so, it really did differ. I know Suzanne and I kind of talked about this through the process. And we learned and gained a lot from working with Suzanne on a consulting basis this year. But, we did have people be successful in their pursuit. And we wanted them to ask for a meeting. Some got them, some didn't. But that's how we did it. And it was done confidentially. And they didn't say, I know what you pledged. They said, here I am. I'm asking you for this gift. We want you to consider a gift of X. Some were, it's not much to our displeasure. Some didn't do it. Some did. It's a practice, right? It is the more you do it, the better when you feel confident enough going in on these asks and asking for a specific amount of money. And so it's not going to be a squeaky clean process from the get-go, but it's a process that was important to get started and get them used to it, because we're probably looking at a very substantial capital campaign in our future, and they're going to have to ask for specific dollars then, because they're the people that our parishioners are going to respond to, as well as us. But that's our example of how we did implement that very specific thing this year.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. I mean, I have found it to be a community building activity. When you get people, you can bring people together, you can train them. If you're looking at lists in a group, it can help build bonds amongst the parishioners, not just so it's not a sort of a unilateral relationship between staff and parish, but amongst the parish itself. Does anybody else have any experience they could share with that?
Hey, Bruce, this is Margaret. I just wanted to say we've been doing solicitation specific asks we did for our capital campaign, and we do have lay leaders that do follow up, as Caroline said, from that letter that they received from the rector. Because we do value that confidentiality piece, I think Caroline made a great point in that, if the Arts Museum is doing it, why aren't we? But some of our parishioners didn't feel comfortable knowing that, because they didn't want their stewardship pledge to be out there either. So we would just say, one way you can skirt around that is we would like for you to pledge the same as you did last year, or consider a 10% gift increase. And the reason why we just said the same as last year is we were trying to be kind of aware of the financial situation with the pandemic. And that's worked really well. Again, we didn't have any face-to-face because of pandemic. So a lot of them were calls, but we have been implementing that for several years. And it's been really helpful for, I think, camaraderie. I think it's also, if you're calling your golf buddy or this woman you play bridge with, it's an easy conversation. So we do let the leaders and the committee members pick who they are gonna connect with. And I think that really does help and broaden the conversation of, if there are any issues, they're maybe more likely to go and share that with their friend or colleague than me, who is the fundraising professional. So yeah, we do that. And I think it's a great way to increase participation.
Thank you. Thanks, David.
I would just add, yeah, I mean, I think the way I can sometimes describe it is, if we as stewardship professionals or we as lay leaders are doing our best work, it's with engaging the community in the work. that's actually our best work, because then we all have ownership in it. All the parishioners have ownership in it. Everybody, all the constituents have ownership in it. And that's actually the kingdom of God. That's what we're striving for. That's what we're working toward. So I think that's important to consider.
Yeah. David,
Yes.
can I just have one quick thing?
Yes, ma'am.
I see it as my job as a stewardship professional in my church to help my people build their church, because this is their church. It's not my church. It's not the rector's church. It's not any other clergy member's church. It's the people's church. And I just see it as my job to lift up these volunteers, to be their quarterback, and step in when I need to be the active participant and help them build their church. So that's kind of really how we've structured a lot of that work around the committee and their actual function, because no one hates more than being on a committee and feeling that it's just a complete waste of their time and why am I in this group? So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we've got about probably 5 or 10 minutes, and I understand from Joe they're backing up. I mean, for the folks that are kind of trying to get to all the sessions, they're backing up the sessions a little bit, so you don't have to feel like you've got to jump off right at 3 to catch the next one. I have to jump off close to 3 to get somebody to a doctor's appointment. But okay, but I do have a question, and I'm gonna slaughter. Is it Rain Libid? I think has a question related to not being in person and how, which is really kind of the question of the year, and how to kind of address this going forward.
Hi guys, yes, thanks David for giving me the unmuting me. But I just with that last answer, that kind of answered it for me. But as you know, I think most of us, I've been reading throughout the chat, a lot of you guys are still have some sort of touch base or personal connection in person. And when I was writing it out, I said, I want to hear from the northern states that are dealing with weather. And then I kind of deleted that. But our leadership kind of took a stance, and I don't know if you guys remember this, but if you had been here a couple of years ago, we have a very unique situation because we have a quite substantial endowment, which covers actually 100% of our operating fund. So as the stewardship chair, our goal every year is to take that money and put it back into our community. We don't actually use it in the facility itself. But when we went 100% virtual, due to our leadership's position, there was a huge disconnect and between the congregation and in general. And when we have a brand new dean and rector who I absolutely love, but he was hyped and ready to go, and he kept coming to me and was wanting to meet and saying, what's your strategy? What do you have to think about? And I wanted to give him another answer besides phone calls. Just maybe something other than that, and if we had any other types of strategies that you guys were kind of taking that was a little bit more unique or you found to be successful.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know the exact, I think all of our dioceses have a little different angle on what they can do and not do. And just reading through the chat, it looks like some folks are opening up. I mean, down in Texas, they're, if you just look at the headlines in the paper, everybody can go back with no masks, anywhere. I'm sure local churches and dioceses are going to do something a little different. I will say at the cathedral, we are not allowed to meet in person inside with more than, I think, 10 or 15 people over the course of 45 minutes or an hour. So the way we've responded to that is probably most effectively is we do have outdoor services on Sunday. We have 4 outdoor services. They're by reservation. You have to wear masks. We can only have up to about 50 folks in attendance. And they've gone, I think they've gone well. I mean, there's some folks that are probably never going to go to them. And there's some folks that love them. They're like, oh, this is great. I hope you keep doing this when we go back inside, because I kind of like it outside. We've put fire pits out. We've put patio heaters out to try to kind of have some creature comforts. And we've been doing that since September. We through some pretty, not northern state kind of cold, but some pretty cold weather still. And that's the best that we've been able to do, I think, outside. We are able to do, we're able to do special ceremonies, baptisms, some weddings and things like that inside. We do some of those outside still, but we're able to do those smaller ceremonies. We are doing confirmation outside next month for all the kids from last year, including my 13-year-old daughter. So that's how the cathedral is addressing some of it. Who else would like to say something?
One thing that it makes me think of is the messaging around this challenge, right? Like, especially as it compares to the churches that are open and the churches that aren't. And if you tell the story of being as safe as possible, and you keep telling it, you say you're going to be safe, then you point to the safety, and then you come back around to the safety and say, look how safe we were, congratulations and good job. And the second thing that I've seen work is a group of parishioners was pointed to a re-entry, examining all the questions. And so you're not on an island as a staff or a clergy person, but you can say, here's the 10 people that are talking about this every other week or every month or every week. And we're interested in the safety, and we're following these guidelines, and these are the guidelines that we trust because we're smart. And so, and sort of lift up and celebrate in a way that the participation of that, instead of, we're being told by the powers that be. I don't know. That's just a thought that I've seen. It works awfully well, and in a way is an engagement opportunity to then steer into other avenues of donating.
Yeah. No, thank you, Adam. I mean, the other thing that hopefully that we're all reinforcing is, gathering on Sundays is obviously incredibly important, and it's what it is for a lot of people. But the church is doing a lot in those intervening 6 days. And so the more that I think we've been able to stress that, our choir is still meeting. They're doing it over Zoom, but they're still meeting. We did the outreach projects. We're raising record sums for discretionary fund for the needy. We're still doing a lot. We're still doing the Bible studies. All that stuff is still happening. So, and there's hope. I mean, we're getting more people vaccinated. We're closer and closer. So, our rector wrote a really great letter last week for the Times, which for our weekly Times, what we call is our Times newsletter. But basically, it was like, support your church where it's at. I mean, that's kind of what it's about. It's kind of supporting each other, no matter kind of where you're at. That's what we're kind of called to do. Yes, Dina.
Yeah, one of the ways in which we've reminded folks about what it is to be church is we did a yard sign campaign, and it was basically had our logo and our name, and it was hashtag we are the church, which I know a lot of people have been using that hashtag, but we did it in a yard sign, and we took them and put them in everybody's yard. And a couple of things happened from that. One, we kind of remembered, oh yeah, we're not the building, like we're the people inside the building. That's what makes it church. And that we can figure out how to stay connected. The other thing that was interesting from that is people discovered how close they lived to each other and didn't know it.
Yeah, exactly. That we did at the cathedral. We've done these things called village visits in the past, and where we kind of pick a neighborhood and we just have a party in the neighborhood, and we get two responses. One is, I didn't know you went to my church, and two is, I didn't know you lived in my neighborhood. So it's finding those ways to kind of connect are just great. Okay, I think we're kind of at time. I appreciate y'all's patience with today and the year. We desperately want to be with each other, and hopefully in a year's time we can do that here in Atlanta. So we're looking forward to that. We've got a couple more days of great kind of programming, including hearing from some great clergy, as well as the president of the Ford Foundation. So I hope you all will tune into some of that. We will, as I said, all these handouts and things like that, we will get up on the app. And if we can't figure out how to get on the app, I'll email them out to people. You're welcome to email me directly if we haven't gotten it to you or something like that. Please, we want to serve you. It's not that we're not trying, it's just that we are trying to figure it out. So I appreciate y'all being here. I'm going to end in prayer. I want to say thank you to my co-host and co-moderators. Y'all were awesome as always. And I hope, that we have some time to talk to each other further throughout the year. Maybe we'll do some continuation on some of the things that we've discussed today. Does anybody, before I leave, anybody on my screen want to say anything to everybody? Any parting thoughts? Okay. All right. So I'm going to read a prayer from the Women's Uncommon Prayers, Our Lives Revealed, Nurtured, and Celebrated. And this is from Terry Parsons. Let us pray. Thank you, God, for making us your stewards. Stewards are the servants whose task it is to see that this earth and all your creation are used according to your purpose. We are those entrusted with the care of the members of your family. We are to see that the meal is prepared and set before them at your table. It is with joy that we assume this place of honor and responsibility in your household. As stewards, we acknowledge that all things come from you. All that we have is your own. Please accept our gifts of time, skill, money, and possessions. These are expressions of our love for you, a love like no other, as it has its origin in the love you first lavished upon us. Help us to do our work according to your will and pleasure, and that all may know the wonder and magnificent abundance of a life in your service. Accept this prayer in the name of Jesus the Christ. Amen. Thank you all. I appreciate it.